I think one of the things that I thought worked surprisingly well was your gels, because I was quite surprised that you could just keep on eating all these gels throughout the whole day. I thought you'd get some stomach upset.
Yeah, 20 gels, so 2 gels an hour. 20 gels is a lot of stuff to carry in your back pockets. So this sort of tail fin pack, even though it seems like a bit of overkill, was really useful, and I just had 10 gels in there and 10 gels in my pockets. And what I do is the caffeine gels I keep separate, so I know that if I want a caffeine gel, then I've got that in a different pocket. If I've got shorts with pockets, the cargo pockets, then it's quite handy to have your caffeine gels in there, so they're quick access if you're feeling a bit down and need a bit of a boost. It seems like overkill to carry a full saddlebag for just a 200 kilometre ride, but because you need quite a lot of equipment, so it's nice to have the option of a lot of storage space, and the weight, it doesn't weigh much more than a bag, so it was really nice to have that extra space, take my overshoes off, leg warmers off, and have a spare pair of gloves in case the weather was really bad. So that was definitely a good investment.
So yeah, I mean, you seem to manage the time in the saddle pretty well. You managed it within the allotted time. Do you get 13 hours?
You get 13 hours for a 200 kilometre road max. So.
And you did it in just over 10.
When we started out, I was really struggling to do any training, so I was a bit worried because I did that 120 kilometre ride from here, from home. That was hard. I mean, that was the hardest of the long rides I've done. I'd had enough with sort of 40 kilometres to go. So that's just 80 kilometres. It's less than halfway around the 200. I don't know if that was something that worried you.
I mean, it's always an unknown, isn't it, when you're taking on a target, which at the time when we said, let's try and do this 200, it was a stretch target. It wasn't like, we'll decide to do something that's going to be really easy for you. I think there was a part of me that felt that you could do it with the right training. I think there was a part of me that felt that if we could get this balance right between fatigue, between rest and some training stimulus, that we could get it right, that there might be a way to do it. Yeah, what we did turned out to be really effective, which was actually quite a lot of rest, quite a good taper before, a lot of rest after, and then just a little bit of training in between, and then the practice rides were also pulling your fitness up. So initially I was a bit worried about giving you so much rest, but it turned out to be a really good call. It worked really well for you.
But we took quite big steps in distance, so really I've only done 3 long rides, one of which was the 200 kilometre ride. So it was 120 kilometres, which was quite a struggle, and then 100 miles on part of that route. Okay, admittedly it was flatter, but that wasn't so hard. I probably fueled better. And then the 200, it was a big jump, and I don't know whether that's because of my background, because I have done a lot of cycling, not a lot of long rides, or if it's just that's the way of things, that most people can manage big steps if they fuel properly and take it at a sensible pace.
Yeah, I think your background probably helped in that you do have quite a good base fitness, even though, more recent history has been a bit sort of speckled. Last year you were doing quite long rides.
Yeah, I suppose 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's actually better to have a big block and then quite a lot of rest, rather than thinking every week, oh man, I've got to do a big ride this weekend.
I think that's important for long events. So for shorter events, you need to be training consistently or frequently. But for longer events, you need to be training consistently, but you need to do the big rides, I think. And that's really what we concentrate on. Having a coach was useful. I know you don't really believe that, but it was, and I think that's made a huge difference. I was able to hand over a lot of the responsibility because I was a bit wary at first whether it would work, but after maybe a month I started to trust in your decisions. I always believe you're a good coach, but whether it would work for me, because I've tried a lot of coaches in the past and it's not worked. But it worked really well, and consequently I didn't have to worry too much about what the training was. I just did it.
I was surprised at that because you've got a good strong background, obviously, in not just in self-coaching but in coaching a lot of athletes to success. So I was surprised how much difference that made, but it was a pleasant surprise. We said we were going to talk about investment, and you did wind up investing quite a lot of money in equipment, which I actually think was really worth it. I'm pleased that you've invested the money you did. The tail fin, aero pack, and the Redshift seat post and the saddle were definitely seemed to make a big difference.
Yeah, and the tyres, which I bought after
Yeah.
the first one, so I went for some road tyres, and that made a big difference to rolling resistance.
Redshift seat post and this Endurance, Selle Italia Endurance saddle is a really good combination. I didn't have any problems in the saddle department.
Yeah, I bought a Redshift rocker seat post, which allowed me to change position.
The fact it moves to get you onto the aero bars is really helpful. Although I didn't use the aero bars as much as I expected to, I did use the saddle in the forward position quite a lot.
I actually found I was riding on the normal handlebars in the forward position. So I certainly recommend that. Somebody in our training group, RRtY, recommended this Redshift seat post that gives you two positions. It's part of their aero pack. And that was worth it. Quite expensive, but it worked really well. And the tail fin was really good.
The tail fin might seem like overkill, but I mean it doesn't weigh a lot, so it just seems, I mean it's pretty big, but it gives me option to, keep my hat and sort of overshoes and stuff when the weather gets too warm, and just I've got that flexibility. It's pretty aerodynamic. It didn't cause any problems aerodynamics wise, and it's just nice to have the option.
I did spend a lot of money, but I probably would have spent it anyway, but maybe over a year rather than over a couple of months. So that was the way I justified it to myself. If I'm going to do these things, I'm going to have to spend the money to get the right equipment at some point. I bought a new saddle because, as I'd mentioned in the video on the 100-mile ride, I was having trouble going to the toilet. I think for some reason I wasn't able to go to the toilet, and I was getting some pain every time I touched the saddle. I was using I think it was a specialised saddle, I can't remember the actual model, and I replaced it with an Selle Italia Endurance. In the past I'd always used Selle Italia Flight Titanium since something like 40 years ago, and I just thought maybe just go back to that, and that's what's always worked for me, and that worked for me this time.
You had to do that, the health risk was too much.
Yeah, I had to do something, otherwise
Yeah.
I would have not been able to carry on with this project.
The biggest takeaway for me definitely is this issue around being able to overcome this issue of fatigue, because for you that's been going on for a long time, and it's been quite long lasting, and I think it's given me a lot of confidence that people who have this long-term issue with fatigue can move on from it and do some effective training and get some achievable goals, which is what you've got now from sort of saying that I might as well give up. We've now got some goals for 2024 that are quite exciting.
Similar to you, my biggest takeaway really is that I was quite surprisingly, I feel fairly comfortable doing 200 kilometres.
The ride went really well, and now I'm feeling quite comfortable with 200 kilometres, so I'm quite keen to try maybe more adventurous 200 kilometre rides rather than extending the distance, although I might try the 300 kilometre event that's run from the same place as this ride was in April. Anyway, we'll see what happens. I'm really encouraged, and I'm looking forward to some new adventures.
We've got half an idea of doing the RRtY, which is 700 kilometres in 100 hours across either from this side to that side of the Pyrenees or the other way around. So we'll see how that goes. But it does give us scope for extending the hilliness of these 200s and doing a few adventures on the way.
So we've now got some really exciting and achievable goals for John for 2024 off the back of 6 months ago him saying that he might as well give up because there wasn't really anything that he could feel that he could do and enjoy, which is really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how that works together.